Hey guys, you know that everyone is doing this, summary of the decade videos, and we're thinking maybe we can do one of those too. So what we can actually talk about, what we know well, what's our sweet spot, and we're thinking, how does software development changed over the last 10 years? Like how is making software programming different today than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago? And I want to talk about this today. I have Tomek Kopczuk, CTO of Swing, with me. And yeah, let's roll. So do you remember how it was to make, let's say, web applications, web apps? Because that's, I think, what we've been doing 10 years ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was.
So if you did like web applications, so a page with interactive elements on it, was it much different than it's today?
I wouldn't say it's much different. I mean, all the technologies changed, but if I remember correctly, like web development was very specific to the web back then. Like JS progressed so much over the years. So right now, if you're thinking JavaScript, you're thinking server-side, you're thinking native applications. That wasn't the case back then.
Oh yeah. I think it was like, what was it called? Web 2.0? That was this time?
I think that was the time.
So you started having like apps in the browser as opposed just to websites. When you look at the content, you started having like shiny buttons with gradients, rounded corners, at least 5 pixels diameter.
That was pretty interesting. If you like reach back in time to those days, like all the frameworks were different. Right now we've got React and Angular, the most popular ones. I mean, apart from Vue.js and everything else, it's kind of niche.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, none of this existed.
Oh yeah. Well,
Angular was just starting,
uh-huh.
pretty much. I think it was taken over by Google, more or less, at that time. Backbone was kind of big.
Yeah.
Then you had Marionette. None of them survived those years.
Oh yeah, right. So you used what, like jQuery, right?
Oh yeah, most people did.
Yeah, they probably still do. There's a lot of people that still do that.
I think what we were doing, we were using Knockout.js, which was, inspired by Apple, really.
Mm-hmm.
And Ember.
Yeah. Oh, Ember was big. It was this part of the Ruby on Rails, the community. I think it was just.
It might have been.
It was pushed like Ruby on Rails, and you do Ember. Maybe DHH went behind that. If you guys, you can Google DHH. It's the creator of Ruby on Rails framework. Super famous 10 years ago for doing programming. Super famous now for not doing programming over 40 hours per week.
Well, he's racing now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, okay, cool. So you made this app, right? And you have it ready, and now you want to roll it out to production, and you want people to look at it. And I remember very well, 10 years ago, it was just about you log into the FTP server, and you copy over some files, and boom, it's there.
Yeah,
but it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, I remember, I think exactly 10 years ago was the time when we spent a lot of our time creating tools for rollouts, for deployments, blue-green deployments. That was a big thing.
We had scripts for that.
Think about it this way. I think 10 years ago, that was the time when Heroku started getting traction.
Uh-huh.
It became very popular, and I think it overhauled everything.
That's true.
Like, suddenly, you could develop a web app, be it a web app or a server-side app, and you could deploy it in a matter of minutes. That was a big thing back then. Like, you didn't have to set up a new Linux box from scratch, or like harden it. You just deploy and that's it, through Git.
Did actually people even do that? Like, did someone harden Linux boxes? Because let's be honest, I remember back then it was just FTP server, rented, and you copy files over, and like, if something is not matching, the CSS is a little bit funky, you just edit it right on the server and not care about anything.
We did that, but apart from us, I don't think so. But like Heroku changed everything. Suddenly you could deploy a single app in a matter of minutes. That wasn't the thing back then. Like you could buy a VPS server and just FTP to it. But other than that, if you want to create something from scratch, that took hours or days.
You SSH to a server and you install all the packets, and nothing ever worked, and you never knew what's gonna be in which version and how and when. Yeah, I remember when Heroku came in. It was, I think, around 10 years ago, 8 years ago. That was such a game changer. Like I was looking at this progress bar with those dots, like building the stack, and I was like amazed.
It was a bit like
what's
magic.
happening there.
Yeah, that was a bit like
complete magic.
Like they introduced reproducible reproducible builds to the mass market.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. Like, if you think about it, Heroku did 10 years ago what Docker does now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so how do we do it now? Like, we don't do Heroku for bigger deployments, so now you do clusters. And how, like, is it actually easier or better, or from users' perspective, from developers' perspective, from, just copying files over or running a Heroku maybe?
I actually love this topic. So we're living in very interesting times right now, because what Heroku did for simple apps 10 years ago, Kubernetes did to massive, huge applications today. And, Heroku really empowered developers to take over the DevOps pipeline. So ops people started to become more, let's say, redundant, to change their role into training and support rather than leading the deployments. And it was a big thing. It was a huge move that started 10 years ago. Right now, we're at a point where developers can actually run massive infrastructures and massive deployments. Very easy. So Kubernetes is for huge applications like microservices-based applications. What Heroku was to web apps.
So what about, you said, making stuff secure was a legwork back then. Let's say you had to do it point by point and know what to do and follow the guide of hardening the Linux server and do all this stuff on yourself, because you basically got a machine from the operator, right? You have a hosting operator that gave you a machine access, you have SSH.
And it's completely empty.
And it's completely empty, and you just do it yourself. So how is it now, like with clusters and with this, with Kubernetes clusters and the Docker containers? Is it easier? Is it harder?
For sure, I wouldn't say it's easier in any way. I mean, it seems easier because technically you've got managed Kubernetes cluster getting this from, let's say, Amazon. And most people just assume that, well, they manage this for me, so it's done, right? But the truth is, because we added a lot of complexity to every single layer of the deployment, now you have to secure all of them. Okay. And like, if you think about it, what we had to do for Linux boxes, most of it you still have to do for your individual Docker containers.
Right.
And a lot of people don't do that. And the best part is, even if it was easier, or it was like automatically updating itself because it's managed, hackers got much better nowadays. So if you think about like, how long would it take, you think, to scan the whole internet for a certain specific vulnerability in one of the, let's say, in Express.js?
Whole internet?
Yeah, whole internet. We know internet comes in a box, but
months?
15 minutes from our internet connection over Wi-Fi from my MacBook.
How?
And the best part? You don't even have to do this, because you can just use Showdown, which is an amazing IoT search engine, which is just used by all the script kiddies out there to look for, let's say, exposed Elasticsearch clusters, right?
Oh, yeah.
So right now the bar is just so much higher for security, so we have to do so much more.
Okay, so the competition is it's skewed towards the bad guys.
It is, because they've got all the time in the world to try to break into your system, and you get just one shot, which is, as we know, impossible. So we have to just make sure that it's just so much harder for them than normally would be. And, people think that they have to be targeted to get hacked, but that's not the case anymore. I mean, people will just accidentally really find your exposed database or your vulnerable application out there. They don't even know who you are. They'll just dump the whole database, put it on Pastebin or somewhere on S3, and that's it.
And that's a big change for sure, because that's why we see all the leaks, right, and all the data dumps and data leaks going out. And it wasn't like that 10 years ago.
It wasn't like that 10 years ago. Like right now, there's a huge upsurge in breaches out there over the last 3 years. It's not that applications got worse. They're pretty much the same. It's just that hackers have it so much easier right now than they used to. And with the added complexity of Kubernetes, of Docker files, everything else, it's just a bit harder to maintain security.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you're kind of lulled into this false sense of safety. That's getting done for you, and that's just not the case.
That you're getting something out of the box as opposed to doing everything manually like you used to.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's always much better if Amazon does it for you instead of you doing that, right?
I can always blame them at least. Okay, what about let's say general software engineering? So everything about making software that's not coding per se, which I think big part of it is tracking your work, tracking your tasks and reporting progress and showing stuff that you're doing. And I think 10 years ago we were already into the agile thing. This was already a thing that didn't really change over time. We had Scrum, like extreme programming was known back then. Everybody's using Scrum. Everybody was using Scrum. Everybody is using Scrum right now. So this didn't change much, but the tools changed a little bit. I remember 2012, it was still a place where we had Mantis Bug Tracker. At least it was popular in Europe. I don't know outside of Europe. And we had Mantis Bug Tracker. And basically you had bug trackers. You didn't have task trackers. Which now when I think about it, surprising.
Interesting you think
there were no things to do aside from fixing bugs, apparently. So everything was in a Mantis Bug Tracker or some kind of other bug tracker. And now we have Jira and Atlassian, the super big player, right? And contenders. And I don't know what's your impression, but I would say nothing really changed there. So you have tasks with comments and you move them through stuff. Like, I don't know if there's a place for innovation there, but for sure the innovation didn't happen yet.
I think there is place for innovation there. I know for a fact that like 10 years ago we were on Agile for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that most people were.
Yeah, it was
maybe apart from some of the enterprises. I know like over the last 10 years it was a big thing to move your company to become more agile. To train Scrum Masters.
The agile coaches market that was starting.
But right now, I think most enterprises are Scrum and Agile. And it's fine. Tools didn't change much. I mean, we were on Jira back then. Mm-hmm. We are on Jira now.
Yeah,
but
it's crazy if you think about like not many things doesn't change over 10 years.
But think about it this way: we did move through different tools in this time. So I think it's just that at the beginning of the decade, you had Jira and a couple of more things, right? Then there was a massive upsurge in new tools, especially for tracking your work, for tracking time. Everyone tested them and moved back to Jira. At least we did.
Yeah, there is a one more wave right now. There's the collaboration because of the remote work trend. The collaboration startups are growing really, really hot right now and becoming really hot, like Clubhouse and others. But I remember there was one tracker that was really awesome. And now when I think about it, I just remember how awesome it is. I don't know if you remember Pivotal Tracker from the Pivotal guys. It was so great. The product is still there. If you wanna just go check it out, it's gonna be a product placement right here. Like go check out Pivotal Tracker. I don't think it changed almost at all over years, but there was like small things that were really genius about it. How it made you really want to finish sprints in time and not drop any stories, and how it highlighted certain things when they bleed over.
And it was 5 times faster than Jira. I remember I always respected Pivotal Labs guys.
No, Pivotal Labs, but
they introduced a lot of tools that we were using at the time for sure.
They're still amazing.
And I respected their approach to UI.
Oh yeah.
Actually, it wasn't 10 years ago. Was that the time when Wunderkinder came about?
True.
Remember Wunderlist?
Yeah, that was about this time, Wunderlist and Wunderkinder, a 6-person team from Berlin, doing like an amazing,
they changed a lot. I mean, they were the first ones to really focus on the experience, on the eye candy of everything. It just looked so beautiful. It was a pleasure to work with. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that trend continued through the decade.
Yeah, they were the first one that were not Apple that decided that, you know what, Apple makes apps that are beautiful, and people like using them, so let's make an app that's beautiful. Yeah. And people like using it.
And at the same time, they could do that in a 6-person team because it was a to-do list. It was an amazing to-do list, that's true, but still, it was a to-do list and not a huge task tracker like Jira.
True.
And I think that trend continued through the decade. We started going more towards more polished but simpler applications.
Mm-hmm. But if we need to say how things changed over years, we have to sadly say that this product is gone. And I don't know about the company. The product is gone for sure. The product is now called Microsoft To Do. It's a part of Microsoft Suite, and it's very unlike the original Wunderlist. At least from the visual perspective, it still works great, but from the visual perspective, it's very unlike the original Wunderlist. It was super skeuomorphic, which was a big thing back then, and now we have to do minimalism again. The other thing I was wondering, a little bit connected with that, if you think about software engineering too, again in general, I was wondering, was it easier to start to be a developer and start programming and learning about stuff then, or is it easier now?
I think there's many more opportunities for junior guys right now, for sure. I mean, junior developers are a thing. Like, we all want to support them. We kind of feel responsible for their growth. And at the same time, it's for sure much easier to start. I mean, you've got so many resources. We didn't have that.
No.
I mean, when I started learning code, I had my Commodore 64 and literally nothing else. Like, there was no internet, no manuals. But that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I mean, the internet was a thing already, right? So you had all the guides in the world. The only thing you didn't have so many building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have so many APIs you could just tap into. I mean, you wanted to do, I don't know, OCR for documents or some machine learning, some recommendations engine. You had to do this from scratch.
Yeah.
You don't now. Like things like, let's say, parsing SLS files, generating PDFs. Right now, it just takes a couple of lines of code and paying a couple of cents per page.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That was not the case back then. Like, it took a week or longer to do the same thing.
Yeah.
At the same time, you could argue that because it was slightly harder to do all that, people learned the foundations, the base of coding, of development in general. And I think that people are missing that nowadays. They learn how to do things that work, but they don't learn how they work.
Mm-hmm.
Which suddenly becomes a problem when they want to move from, let's say, mid to senior position, or from junior to mid, because they've got so much more to learn. Mm-hmm. But they become productive much earlier in their career.
Yeah, you're right.
And they also get to create software.
It's this amazing, rewarding feeling doing something that works, right? That's why most people do software development at all.
Yeah, I mean, you do this for the satisfaction.
Yeah, it's just building stuff. But it's a big, that's a big topic that maybe we can talk about some other day, because there's this. Some people say it's actually bad that you're staying on this high level of abstraction, not knowing how things work, and you just leverage things that are built for you before, like databases, APIs for stuff. And a lot of people are there arguing that it's actually good, because why to reinvent the wheel? You can become productive, you can have this good feeling that things work and it's fine. Some other people argue it's actually bad because you don't understand how it works, and you can make mistakes while using it, and when the problem arises, you can't really debug it. Like, debugging is a problem then, right? But I think you're right. I think it's easier to start coding right now because you can start from this very high level of abstraction and not go into those details that you had to. And you're right. Like, when I was learning to code, I was using books basically, which I don't think people use them still too, but not so common.
That's true.
I had like a Turbo Pascal book that went you through, took you through everything. I think it's, even though everything is changing faster, right? You have new front-end JavaScript framework basically every season, like spring, summer.
Fall. Yeah, I actually think this is a problem in the industry. But it's not a new thing. Like 10 years ago, we had Backbone and Ember, which took over jQuery. And now we've got React and Angular, which took over Ember. I don't think it's going to change, like it's going to stay the same. But it's still amazing that in your first 3 months of coding, you can actually create a fully functional web app, deploy it, and start gathering user base, user feedback. I don't think that's bad.
No,
I think that's actually
sure
really
not
good.
bad.
Because us all these, we tend to understand everything there is about computers and how they work, which is very cool, like if you want to debug, let's say, some networking issue. At the same time, it took us much longer to get to the point where we gather user feedback about our applications. We tended to create things in isolations, in silos, just for ourselves. Right now, people have the ability to just create something and put it out there, which teaches you completely different skills that took us so much longer to acquire. So I don't think that's worse or better. I think it's different.
Cool. And what about from not only from coder's perspective, but maybe a little bit from user perspective and somebody who's using the software? How do you think it changed over these 10 years? Because computers got so much more powerful. Maybe not so much, but way more powerful. Our pocket computers, which were not a thing 10 years ago, but these 10 years is a whole evolution from first iPhone to iPhone with App Store, apps, Android, mobile. This is a whole story that so many smart people talked about, like new platforms, etc. But those pocket computers that we have in our pockets, called smartphones, are endlessly more powerful than they were 10 years ago.
For sure.
But at least from my perspective, I don't see that. Software is amazing, but I wouldn't say it's that much better than it was.
No,
especially in terms of performance sometimes.
I would say it's actually much worse than it used to be. I very often come back to those days. I mean, you could use your computer and it was really fast. Yeah, very often it was, especially those early MacBooks.
Now, I miss this feeling. Snow leopard times.
Yeah.
You click on stuff. Oh my god! Yeah, you click on stuff and it shows where is that.
And that was impressive. Those were productive. Right now, you open up Slack, which is a chat app. There's nothing more there. It's a chat application. You can send
with some whistles and bells.
Yeah, but it's still a chat application. I mean, it's not that different from IRC. Like this, it's just more. It's nice. But you open it up and your computer just suddenly collapses. Yeah. It uses all of your memory. To eat through your battery in no time. And that changed.
Why do you think is that because I hear people talk about caring about user experience so much, or it's so important for every product, but it seems like not all parts of the experience are important.
Well, as you know, software is always about trade-offs, right? So in this case, we always have to choose. Well, we don't have to, but we usually tend to choose new features and actually shipping software to polishing it completely and to having performance software. And that's probably a good choice. And over the last decade, for sure, we just started, sadly, introducing worse and worse software to people, slower software, memory-hogging software.
So it was conditioning.
It was conditioning. And people just started not really expecting software to be really fast. Yeah. And that's a sad thing because, if you don't have a riot on your hands, if you introduce an update that just starts eating your battery, you will never change that.
Yeah.
Because you just traded off more velocity or more features.
Yeah, you have to. Performance. Teams have to do things faster, right? So they have to crank up new versions faster. Even if you look at, I don't know, how often you had a new macOS premiere, or how often you had a new iOS premiere, or a new phone premiere. Years apart, now you have to have a new system, a new device every 6 to 8 months. Right, it's crazy. It's just crazy. They don't have, it's impossible. Even if you have all the money in the world, if you have the best people in the world, there's just not enough time.
But still, there are a couple. It's interesting because right now you see this trend where some applications or some devices, let's say, promote themselves as being really fast. Really
that's a trend that I'm welcoming with open arms.
I think it just goes in cycles.
I have.
Right now you've got Firefox. They're really promoting themselves as being really fast and efficient. Apple over the last couple of iOSs focused on performance and polishing, and that's a great trend.
That's a good trend, but I don't like it from one perspective. That it's, what's used to be a standard, decade ago or over a decade. Now it's called premium. Because it's a premium software category. Because if you look at very popular or like very elitist and popular mail app called Superhuman, their selling point is performance and how fast it is. But it's becoming a flagship example of a new segment called premium software. So now fast mail client is all of a sudden a premium thing to have, right?
It's pretty sad,
fast.
actually.
So that's the part I don't like about this trend. I don't want to be forced to pay more to have something that's not slow.
But you will have to.
Which I didn't have to pay extra for that. It was kind of assumed that things perform.
But maybe the market had to move this way. I mean, it's like with cars. You want a fast car, you have to pay up.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, you're right. But not necessarily. Maybe I hope so. I know there is this company called Linear, Linear.app. So they do a Jira competitor. That's very interestingly thought out because it's thought out all from a perspective of the developer, not from a perspective of, I don't know, project manager or supervisor or whatever. So it's a native...
Technically, Jira was the same way.
In the beginning, yeah, but it's all, again, doing it years later. So it's native app, it's very focused on using it with a keyboard, not the mouse, and the big selling point is how fast it is, how performant it is. And so far, it's not more expensive than Jira, so maybe it doesn't have to be premium.
Well, Jira price is kind of premium. I mean, the amount of money we spent for Jira and Confluence, unbelievable.
No, that's the upside of having such software as a service business, which is a very good business to invest in for sure.
So let me ask you a question.
Oh, I wasn't prepared for that.
So what kind of email client are you using right now?
Gmail.
And what have you been using 10 years ago?
Gmail. No, for God's sake, no. Thunderbird.
Ah, you see? That's one more thing that changed. We used to use applications that were suited for a certain thing, or let's say an email client was a thing, and we used to plug in all of our accounts there. Right now, we're just using Gmail. I really don't like this trend because we're actually getting vendor locked in. Much more than you used to. And, well, that might be a good thing or a bad thing, depends, but certainly different. Most of your work is actually done within a web browser. All of it for you.
Yeah.
And, well, I wouldn't say it's bad. It's different, though.
No, it's a web browser is a... It was this... Yeah, you're right. It started then, and now we're there, basically. Web browser is an operating system right now. It really doesn't matter if you're on a Windows or Mac or Linux or Chrome OS or iOS
your mobile.
or iOS or basically whatever you want to be on. As long as you have something in the Chromium engine, it's called like that, you have everything because everything is in the web browser. That's something that started then, and I think we're not still not peaking, but surely all the way into web browsers.
Yeah, one thing I really like about this, you can actually get up and running with your new laptop, let's say, in a matter of hours.
It's all in the cloud.
It is. As long as you've got access to your passwords, because obviously you're using a password manager for this.
Yeah.
Then you can be up and running on a new device in an hour.
Yeah.
Which is awesome if you happen to lose your device.
All right, so I think we covered actually a lot of stuff about how things change. So, as good, old people, we can always agree that some things change to the better, but most of it is worse. And young these days, they're worse, and then everything used to be better back then. But I'm thinking, for the next decade, right? For the next 10 years, give me one prediction. What's going to be big?
One prediction?
Yeah, big for next 10 years.
All right. Actually, I can start by saying that this is going to be an amazing decade, I think. In general, but I think the biggest thing this decade will be machine learning for sure. I mean, it's a huge buzzword now, so everyone kind of expects this.
Yeah,
But
I think in a good place on this, this slope where this value of delusion and all that, and then we go to this productivity plateau. So we're getting there.
I don't believe that we'll get to any meaningful intelligence or to anything that you would consider more smart than what we've got right now. But we will learn to use all of those tools that we kind of started developing during the last decade, especially during the last couple of years. We'll find uses for them. Mm-hmm. They will become good enough that they can actually be applied to your life.
Okay.
In general. Like things like much better Siri, much better Google Assistant.
Okay.
I think this is exactly what's going to happen. Not autonomous cars.
Till the end of the decade? Maybe.
I don't think that's going to happen. Actually.
Yeah.
It might, but I don't think so because it's just so massively complicated and hard.
Yeah.
Especially after the first crash.
Oh yeah, right.
I mean, it can just knock it back a couple of years.
Yeah, that's what Volkswagen guys told us. That's what Volkswagen spokesman said. We have a lot of research done and we're just not getting there.
Yeah, I think this will be a massive problem for AI in general. The same for biases that AI introduces. But I think this decade will start solving and tackling those issues. Oh, yeah. So we start thinking about moral and ethical considerations of AI. And this is something that right now does not inhibit progress. It will start doing so. But because of this, we'll learn as humanity what it means to live with AI, what it means to live with something that can profile you. And we'll find certain guidelines that we will live by for the next decade. And I think that will be the massive change.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Okay, cool.
What do you think?
I'll give you my prediction for the next decade. So my prediction for the next decade is nothing as fancy as AI. It's basically the surge of remote work. And work from home and this trend. And a little bit like with Agile, started with a small organization and then bleed it out to big corporations and basically become standard. So I think it will go over to larger corporations too. For all knowledge workers, of course, right? So the workers that can do stuff remotely on their computers. This is going to be a huge trend and it's going to change plenty of industries, actually shape them, change how people spend money, on transportation to get to work and back, how people spend money on clothing, if you think about it, because now you don't need a separate set of clothes for work, for a dress code, how people spend money on beauty products. There's a lot of second-order consequences in terms of working from a place where you're comfortable as opposed to the office that we're going to see coming to life this next 10 years, and I'm actually very excited how things will change. Cool, okay.
What do you think this will do for general happiness of people?
Oh my god, that's a very good question. I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that. Let's see, we'll see.
You're pretty happy in general.
We'll see, because we'll see. So there are people who say that social connections at work are super important for your happiness. You can kind of emulate that over chat, especially or over video calls a little bit. And you have your social circle outside of work that's supposed to make you happy, your family and your social circle not work related. I don't know. We'll see, because it will actually have a big experiment to show how much your deep social connections with your coworkers that are so near to you and can help you like on the ground is important. We'll actually experience that.
I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, I deeply believe that right now we're kind of forcing everyone to come to work. And, well, we are not, but most people are still. And like you're forcing them to conform. Mm-hmm. With the abstraction remote work, you're basically giving everyone the ability to choose to do that and see for themselves if it's better.
Yeah, until the point when you don't have an office anymore, then you can't.
There's no choice. But with co-working spaces, and actually it's a trend of co-living in Silicon Valley at least.
Yeah.
It will be interesting times.
That has something to do with rent prices, probably. Anyway, cool. So I think we covered a lot. We also have our 2 predictions. Let's meet in 10 years and see if we're right. We can promise you that right now. If YouTube is still around and videos. So thank you guys for being with us. I hope you enjoyed that. And stay tuned for more content from us. Take care.
Thank you.